Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how I make my scrunchies. With my scrunchies I do use hair ties. Now there is a few ways that you can do it, but I use the burrito method, so that's the way I'm going to show you. If you do want to know the other couple of ways you can do it, just send me a message or let me know in the comments below and I can make a video showing you how to do it the other ways. I'm going to show you with an extra large piece of fabric for my extra large scrunchies. So with those, I'm also doing it on a pre-cut piece of fabric, but this is about six inches wide, 6 inches across that way, and from selvage to selvage, it's the length of the fabric. If I were going to do a regular scrunchie, I would do it about 5 inches wide, and I'd still do it from selvage to selvage, but then I would cut this piece in half, so I would get two scrunchies out of the one piece of fabric. But because I'm doing an extra large, it's 6 inches across and from selvage to selvage for the extra length. I do use a contrasting thread for my scrunchies as best as I can. So this is fairly light, so I'm going to just use a white thread. This is also a stretch fabric, a knit fabric, so you will need to do a zigzag stitch for this part going down here. Otherwise, if you've got a straight stitch when you're stretching it, it can snap the thread. So you need to have a zigzag or a stretch stitch going that way so that when it stretches, it doesn't break the thread. But first off, you're going to fold your fabric in half lengthwise, so your width part is across that way. And then I'm just going to use a straight stitch just to sew along this part. So straight stitch down there, and then we'll change to the stretch stitch. So I'll just move the camera so you can see. And always do a back stitch at the beginning, at the end of your stitches. So now you've got that, you're going to fold it out lengthwise. Now you can do this two ways. I like to do mine with the seam on the bottom, so that when you fold your middle part in, you're starting to sew your seam. But you can do it the other way and fold in with have the seam on the top and fold in from that way, so you start from here, but I prefer to do it the other way. So with your seam in the middle and put out lengthwise, just put it down that way. Before I sew, I'm going to change my stitch on my sewing machine to a stretch stitch. So now that that's out and folded, you're going to fold one corner into the middle and the other corner in over that, so it's down to the edge. And then I also you could just do it like that and then fold over, but I like to be a little bit extra careful, just fold it in half again and make sure it's in the middle, just to make sure that you're not catching that middle piece in this when you're sewing, because if you do that you won't be able to flip. So then we get this and they go down, they go together like that. Now if you were using elastic, you would just start going down there and all the way around, but I'm using a hair tie, so I put my hair tie in here. So, and try and keep your seam together. Now, with a stretch fabric or a knit fabric, you need to be careful that you're not stretching it out, because if you're stretching it out when you're sewing, you're going to have one bit that's stretched and one bit that's not. So when you get to the end, you're going to have a really big gap and you're not going to have a very nice finish, because you're going to have a really big bit that you're going to need to fold over. So I'm extra careful, and also careful when you're pulling it around to make sure that you've got them as even as possible when you're getting your pieces of fabric in. So get that in like that, make sure you're in as close together and keeping your fabric as close together as possible. I start just underneath the seam and back stitching at the beginning and the end. Making sure your middle bit's in. And also make sure you're not stretching out your fabric, like I said. Now, and start stitching. Try and keep your seam as even as possible because that will affect your finish as well, which I know is hard going around when you're not going straight because you're using a hair tie. So you just need to be very gentle with this. It may take a little bit longer than a fabric that's not stretchy because it takes a little bit extra time to be fiddly and careful, but it gets a better result at the end. So you get a little bit further down, just pull the fabric that you've got out there, pushing your middle bit in, get your top bit over, make sure your edges are joined together, and then keep sewing a little bit longer. Okay, so now this is the next bit. You need to start pulling your inner fabric that you had folded in, start pulling it through so that you can get extra fabric and keep sewing it around the edge. Again, careful not to stretch. And I have done it, and it doesn't look very nice, so I'm extra careful now. And if you have a twitchy foot like me, it might be better to take your foot off your presser foot as you're pulling your fabric through and getting it ready, because you might start sewing before you're ready to start if you accidentally put your foot down. Okay, so here you need to pull a little bit more fabric through. This is where you may need to start pulling your fabric through a little bit more again, and this is where you're going to start meeting the seam around here, so you're just going to have to, you might have to push with your finger from that one just to push it through a little bit so you can keep pulling it. Just careful not to stretch out your band too much. And pulling your fabric over with your middle bit in again. Pull a little bit more through. We're close to the end now, so this is where you need to start being extra careful, and it's getting a little bit more tricky. So this is the little bit tricky part, making sure you're lining it up because it's harder now, and also that you're not stretching it like I said. And trying to keep your seam as even as possible too. Now I must have stretched it a little bit where I didn't mean to, so I've got little bits, but not as bad as what it can be. So if you do get the little bits, just try and fold little bits and pieces in as you go, so that you sort of match up in it, because it'll scrunch up anyway when you've got your scrunchie. So you just go close to the seam, so you've got to leave a little bit of an opening so you can flip it, back stitch again. Okay, so now we've got our opening here. Got our opening here, and we're just going to go get our finger inside the little opening and start pulling our fabric to flip it. Careful not to stretch out our band too much, but these sort of bands that I use are pretty good, not stretch out too much. So now that we have flipped our scrunchie, we have our opening here. I like to try and leave as small an opening as possible, and then fold our ends together, and we're going to just sew across there, using that bit with a straight stitch, because it won't matter, because it doesn't get stretched that way, it just gets stretched when you're pulling it on, so the inside seam, but it won't get stretched that way. So now with this one, you can do it any way you like, but I find it's better if you put your stitch length to the smallest stitch length you can, because it hides it a little bit better than having a longer stitch length. and then I try and put it as close to the edge of the fabric as I can to close my opening, and do it as gently as possible, putting my openings together as close to the edge as I can. And I'm going to back stitch as well. Make sure that your seam is definitely closed, that you haven't missed anything. And there's your seam. It is a little bit further in than what I wanted, but it's hidden because you've got your small stitch length. And then you just fluff out your scrunchie. And there you go, all done. Extra large, really fluffy and thick. I love these in my hair. I actually have one of my regular ones in my hair at the moment. It's just a regular purple. It is all I have in my hair. I don't have any bands or anything, and it's just twisted around twice and it stays in place perfectly. So I love my scrunchies. I've been getting a fair few headaches lately, so I've been finding that wearing this scrunchie is better for me because it helps my headaches because it's not as tight. Extra. So yeah, there you go. Your scrunchie is all finished. Now, when I do these, I generally, if I'm doing them for a market, I generally do them in bulk. So I'll do your cross bit there. I'll do however many I'm doing, I'll do all that in one go. And then I'll start the folding and sewing around all in one go. So I'll generally use a white thread for that, so I don't have to keep changing my thread, because you're not going to see it anyway because it's on the inside, it's your seam. And then once I've done all of that, I'll then cut your threads and flip them all, and then I'll get them into piles of whatever colour, how many of each colour or whatever colour thread I'm going to need for what scrunchie. And then I'll start doing the closing seam in batches as well by changing my colour thread for each different colour scrunchie as I go. And then after I'm finished that, I'll cut your threads as well, and we're done. So anyway guys, that's it for today's video. Let me know if you like this tutorial and if you'd like to see more, and also, like I said, let me know if you'd like to see the other ways that you can make it with the hair tie. And also let me know if you did make it and how you went. I'd really love to hear. So anyway guys, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Bye.